I think many of us want a home that feels remembered, lived in, and collected over time. A home that says something about who we are and the life we're building. And I feel that's why so many of us are drawn to vintage and antique pieces, because we're not just trying to decorate our homes, we're trying to create a story. So today I want to share some of my favorite antique and vintage finds, along with 10 heritage anchors I think help to create a home that looks and feels classic, layered, and deeply personal. Hello friends, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm Jennifer. I am so grateful you joined me. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and join our community. I would love to have you with us. I am so excited for today's video because we'll be talking about one of my favorite topics of all time: antique, vintage, and thrifted finds. Last month, we talked about how to thoughtfully blend old and new pieces to create a home that feels layered, timeless, and lived in. A decorating approach I often call core layering. But today I want to build on that idea by sharing what I look for when I'm out antique and vintage shopping. The pieces that give a home that storied, enduring feeling. These are what I think of as heritage anchors, the elements that bring depth, continuity, and soul to a space and help a home feel truly collected over time. And the beautiful thing is they can be found almost anywhere. Antique malls, specialty boutiques, consignment stores, flea markets, thrift stores, and estate sales have all become some of my favorite places to find those perfect pieces for our home. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about creating a home with depth and character is believing it has to happen all at once. We see finished interiors online and assume the beauty comes from expensive furniture or perfectly designed rooms. But in my experience, that usually isn't what makes a space feel special. I know I've been guilty of going out and buying a bunch of decorative pieces to try to complete one area of a room, only to get everything home, style it, and realize it doesn't really work together the way I imagined. And I think that's because I was trying to force pieces to work instead of collecting slowly and letting the space evolve more naturally, letting it tell me what it needs. When you look closely at homes that truly feel timeless, the magic is usually in the smaller things. A found seashell from a vacation, a vintage brass vessel from a thrift store years ago that you loved, or a worn wooden stool that somehow works in every room. It's also worth noting that not every special piece has to be antique, vintage, or even purchased at all. Some of the most beautiful layers are the ones gathered from everyday life, things found in nature, handmade pieces, or objects that hold a memory. I truly believe those kinds of elements are just as important in a heritage style home because they add warmth, personality, and a sense of history in a way that simply can't be bought. And over time, those pieces, whether vintage, handmade, or found, become what I call heritage anchors. Not because they're necessarily valuable, but because they ground a home in warmth, character, and memory. I think that's exactly why so many of us are drawn to heritage-inspired homes right now. In a world that often feels fast, disposable, and trend-driven, there's something deeply comforting about a space layered with pieces that have been gathered over time, both old and new. The beauty of a heritage home is that it isn't temporary. It feels gathered, refined over time, and personal. And once you start collecting with this mindset, decorating becomes less about chasing trends and more about building a home that feels deeply connected, cohesive, and entirely your own. So with all of that in mind, I want to share the 10 categories I believe create the foundation of a truly collected home. The timeless heritage anchors that move effortlessly from room to room and help your home tell the story of who you are and how you live. Furniture and architectural pieces are some of my favorite things to look for when creating a heritage style home because they bring instant authenticity and character. And when I'm searching for furniture, I'm thinking about more than solid construction, dovetail drawers, or maker's marks. I'm also considering style, function, and how a piece will actually live in our home. When you're looking at antique hutches, vintage chairs, or old dressers, it helps to know what fits both your aesthetic and your season of life. If you have small children, an antique settee may not be the best choice, but a Louis XV chest of drawers in the entry could be absolutely perfect. And don't overlook architectural fixtures either. Things like clawfoot tubs, pedestal sinks, old doors, salvaged millwork, or other time-worn details. Wooden architectural elements give a home depth and permanence. But as beautiful as they work best when they feel connected to the rest of the house through similar wood tones, aged finishes, classic lines, or an overall mood that carries from room to room. When I'm shopping, I'm always looking for craftsmanship, patina, scale, and whether a piece feels timeless enough to live naturally with the rest of our home. We recently found a gorgeous vintage French provincial dresser for an incredible price, and after removing the paint and restoring the wood, it has become one of my favorite finds of all time. We also used salvage wooden spindles to create candlesticks that add a true sense of story and fit our style perfectly. Sometimes it's the unexpected pieces that make the biggest impact. Just remember, too many competing styles or wood tones can make a home feel chaotic instead of thoughtfully gathered. A good rule of thumb is to consider what you already own before bringing in another antique piece or architectural element so everything feels connected rather than accidental. Glass and crystal are one of the loveliest ways to bring heritage style into a home. When I'm looking for pieces like vintage goblets, glass bowls, crystal candlesticks, small dishes, or old decanters, I'm not only thinking about rarity or value, I'm thinking about what resonates with me, what fits our home, and what adds beauty without feeling overly formal. Some people assume crystal won't work in a relaxed or lived-in space, but I couldn't disagree more. I do think choosing the right pieces matter, but every home deserves a little shine, and these pieces make everyday life feel a little more special. Glass and crystal have a beautiful way of bridging old and new, and when they're repeated throughout a home, they carry light, sparkle, and elegance from room to room. That repetition creates cohesion in such a quiet, effortless way. When I'm shopping, I look for timeless shapes, sculptural forms, and pieces that feel classic rather than tied to one particular era. I'm always keeping our style in mind and choosing items that will complement the rest of our home. And I really do think it's worth trusting your instincts because if you're drawn to something, there's usually a reason. Some of my favorite places to find affordable pieces are estate sales and thrift stores because adding a bit of sparkle shouldn't have to break the bank. Stone and metal are some of the strongest heritage anchors because they feel truly timeless and bring a sense of permanence to a home. They also create some of the most beautiful contrast when styling. Things like brass bowls, iron candle holders, Silver trays, marble bookends, and travertine pieces all add weight, texture, and quiet beauty to a space. These materials feel enduring, a reminder that a home doesn't have to be delicate or perfect to feel beautiful. And when they're repeated throughout a house, their finishes and textures begin to echo from room to room, creating a grounded sense of cohesion. When I'm shopping, I look for aged patina, visual weight, simple lines, and pieces that feel substantial without being overly ornate. I've collected quite a bit of brass over the years, but lately I've been on the hunt for special silver pieces, aged marble bowls, and other natural stone objects to add to our home. I'm loving the look of silver in our kitchen hutch, but I also enjoy adding silver throughout my home with candlesticks and candy dishes. I don't think you can go wrong with any metal you bring into your home, whether it's brass, silver, copper, or iron. They all add beauty and history. Ceramic and pottery pieces add soul and character to a home. They're one of the easiest ways to bring artistry, tradition, and a sense of history into a space. And one of the things I love most about them is how versatile they are. Whether your style leans traditional, European, eclectic, or even a little more modern, pottery always seems to belong. Pieces like crocks, pitchers, bowls, plates, and all those beautiful vessels that seem to tell a story even when they're empty are some of my favorite things to source. I especially love anything with a European feel. Ceramic and pottery bring that handmade, time-worn quality that makes a home feel layered and lived in rather than overly styled. And when you repeat similar shapes, tones, or glazes throughout the house, it creates a quiet sense of continuity because the eye begins to recognize that rhythm from room to room. When I'm out shopping, I look for classic forms, muted earthy colors, interesting glazes, and pieces with enough age and character to feel as though they've been passed down through the generations. One of my favorite antique finds of all time is an ironstone soup tureen we found in an antique store in Chattanooga. It came with a newspaper article and a handwritten note from an aunt to her niece for her wedding. This gives us a glimpse into the story of the piece, the family it belonged to, and even its age. The tureen is over 200 years old and it remains one of my most treasured finds. I feel truly honored to be the one caring for it now. Just remember, continuity is your friend when collecting ceramics and pottery. If every piece is a completely different color, shape, and style, it can start to feel scattered. So I think these pieces are most beautiful when there's some repetition and tonal connection. Wood and textural pieces are often what make a house feel like a home. They add instant warmth and that beautiful sense of age that newer pieces just can't replicate. Things like carved wooden bowls, cutting boards, woven baskets, linen, embroidered pillowcases, and all those wonderfully imperfect pieces that feel soulful rather than shiny are some of the best ways to bring character into a heritage-inspired home. These kinds of elements work with almost any style because they make a home feel more authentic and relaxed. And when you repeat natural textures throughout a house, they create cohesion in such a subtle, quiet way. That warmth and contrast are often what make a space feel cozy and welcoming. When I'm shopping, I'm always looking for rich patina, natural wear, interesting grain, and textures that feel timeless rather than trendy. Some of my favorite finds are antique and vintage baskets. Their aged texture and faded colors are almost impossible to replicate with something new. I truly believe found things don't need to be perfect. In fact, those little imperfections are often what make them so beautiful. Another piece I absolutely adore is the wooden bench Corey made for me from old boards we sourced at a salvage yard. It may not be a vintage find, but it has the same worn beauty and patina that make older pieces feel so special. This sweet bench brings personality to any room I place it in. So I think the beauty comes when these pieces are gathered with some consistency in tone and style. Find the ones that truly speak to you. Lighting is one of those things I used to think of as purely functional, but over time I've realized it's often what makes a home feel styled and complete, like the final bit of jewelry that finishes an outfit. Old lamps, brass sconces, iron chandeliers, and soft ambient lighting with aged finishes give a room a gentle glow you can truly feel. Lighting shapes atmosphere more than almost anything else. It can make a home feel calm, intimate, and deeply welcoming. And when similar finishes, silhouettes, or warm light levels are repeated throughout a house, they create beautiful cohesion because everything begins to feel connected in mood. That doesn't mean every light in your home needs to be antique or vintage. In fact, blending old and new often creates more of a story than using fixtures from all the same era. Some of my favorite vintage finds are lamps we've sourced from estate sales and vintage shops. When I'm shopping, I look for classic shapes, warm-toned finishes, quality materials, and pieces that can transition easily across styles. Some of the beautiful lamps we found are actually mid-century modern, but they still work with my French country style because of the materials and details, things like marble, brass, and soft curves. One of my favorite finds is a pair of gorgeous Murano glass lamps I found for an amazing price. Later, I discovered they were worth about 4 times what I paid, but that isn't the reason I love them. The reason I adore these lamps is the way they make me feel when I look at them. They have a unique beauty with their swirled colored glass and marble base that is perfect for our home and are something I'll treasure for years. The main thing to keep in mind with lighting is restraint. Too many competing styles, finishes, or textures can make a home feel disjointed, so I think the goal is to choose pieces that support the overall mood you want your home to carry. It's about finding special lights that blend beautifully with newer fixtures, the ones that provide the crowning touch. Art, frames, and mirrors are some of the most meaningful pieces you can collect because they bring personality to a home in such a visible, expressive way. Old paintings, aged frames, and mirrors with character make a space feel layered and full of depth. And I think these pieces can completely shape the mood of a room. A stormy seascape and a dark wood frame can feel moody and contemplative, while a floral still life in a gold frame can bring warmth, light, and joy. And that's exactly how these pieces create cohesion too. A cohesive home doesn't require matching decor, it requires a repeated feeling. When similar tones, frame finishes, and styles are carried from room to room, everything begins to feel connected, even if nothing is exactly the same. When I'm shopping, I look for art with muted colors, classic subject matter, beautiful age, and frames that feel rich in texture rather than overly perfect. We've collected some true antique and vintage pieces that I absolutely love, and I fully intend to keep adding art as I find pieces that speak to me. I'm also very lucky that my husband Corey is artistically inclined. He recently painted a beautiful horse for our home, and it's become one of my most treasured possessions. I'm hoping that when his schedule allows, I can convince him to create more art for us. And you better believe I'll be sharing it with you. Corey also created a beautiful antique mirror for our living room, and it has truly transformed the space. It adds so much character and softly reflects light in a way that makes the room feel even warmer and more complete. If you're ever unsure what a room might need, a mirror is almost always a beautiful place to start. Unique finds are often where a home's personality begins to show most clearly. I'm talking about antique books, vintage statues, vinyl records, unusual objects, and all those one-of-a-kind pieces that make you pause while you're shopping. I think that pause matters because the pieces that stir something in us are often the ones that make a home feel deeply personal rather than simply well decorated. And even though these finds can be eclectic, they still create cohesion when they're chosen around a repeated mood, color story, material, or feeling that shows up again and again throughout the home. When I'm out shopping, I pay close attention to what naturally draws me in, but I'm also asking whether a piece fits the larger story I'm trying to tell in our home. Too many random treasures can start to feel like clutter. So I think unique finds are most powerful when they're personal, intentional, and woven thoughtfully into the rest of the space. They can even become a focal point in a room, like an old grandfather clock or a one-of-a-kind vase, something that stands out beautifully and sparks conversation. Hardware is one of those categories people often overlook because it feels too small to matter, but sometimes the smallest details can completely change how a home feels. Things like old drawer pulls, hooks, aged brass knobs, iron latches, and other utilitarian pieces quietly add character in a way that feels thoughtful and refined. And when similar metals or styles are repeated throughout a home, they create a subtle sense of cohesion, even if most people can't immediately explain why the house feels so pulled together. And don't feel like you need to change every piece of hardware in your home to something antique or vintage. I think it's far more beautiful to add those special touches in just the right places and let them build character over time. Although I haven't had much opportunity to buy hardware lately since we're currently living in a rental home, the things I would look for are solid materials, beautiful wear, classic shapes, and finishes that support the larger mood of our home. Too many mixed metals or unrelated styles can start to feel visually busy, so I think hardware works best when it's chosen as part of the home's overall language, even if you're only able to add it in small ways. The last category I want to touch on is personalized collections. And these may be the most meaningful heritage anchors of all because they tell the story of your life in a way nothing else can. Maybe it's ironstone, vintage paintings, old wooden utensils, silver trays, woven baskets, thrifted pottery, or little trinket boxes you've gathered slowly over time. These are the pieces that create emotional connection because the homes we remember usually aren't the most perfect ones. They're the most personal. And I think collections are such a beautiful way to create cohesion because they don't have to live all in one cabinet or on one shelf to matter. When you sprinkle a collection throughout your home, it creates rhythm, continuity, and a repeated feeling that quietly ties everything together. Although that doesn't mean your home should feel like an antique store. Collections need a little restraint. I think they're most beautiful when you group like pieces, narrow your focus to a particular kind of item, leave breathing room around them, and blend old elements with newer ones so everything still feels lived in and balanced. When I'm adding to a collection, I pay attention to things I return to again and again. Blue and white ceramics, aged crocks, woven baskets, because that repetition usually reveals what truly belongs in our home. The goal isn't to buy more or collect everything at once, it's to choose with intention and let those pieces slowly become part of your home's identity. And in the end, I think that's so often what gives a storied home its deepest sense of beauty. A very important question I keep in mind as I shop for meaningful things is this. What kind of feeling do I want my home to express? Because a collected home is gathered, refined, and loved one meaningful detail at a time. Some of us are fortunate enough to have inherited beautiful family heirlooms, but others may be starting from scratch, and that's perfectly okay. In many ways, it's a beautiful opportunity to create your own story and gather the kinds of pieces that become part of your home's unique identity, or what I like to call a decorative lineage. I'd love to know what kinds of heritage anchors are on your wish list right now, so be sure to leave me a comment and tell me what you'll be keeping an eye out for on your next antique or vintage shopping adventure. And if this video spoke to you or inspired you in some way, I'd be so grateful if you will like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so we can continue building this community together. Your support truly helps this channel grow, and I am so thankful for each of you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Your kind comments and thoughtful encouragement mean more than I can say, and I'm always so grateful to have you here. Wishing you a beautiful week ahead, and I'll see you very soon in the next one. Bye for now.